Welcome to the Hockey Writers Prospect Corner, a show with our top prospects writing crew, bringing you the latest news, analysis, scouting reports, mocks, rankings, and much more. From the World Juniors to the NHL Draft floor, from the farm to the NHL, our team covers everything that happens in the world of prospects. So sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready for Prospect Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Prospect Corner presented by the Hockey Writers. Today, we're going to be looking back at the 2015 NHL entry draft and redrafting the first round based on all that we know about those players now. I'm your host, Logan Horn. Today, I'm joined by my co-hosts and fellow prospect analysts, Peter Baracchini and Matthew Zator. Peter, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Just got out of the cold spell here. I'm pretty sure you could relate to that. Logan, Matt, from where you guys are, but at the same time, we've been dealing with just unpredictable weather at this point. So thank God the freezing cold warning has been lifted and back to somewhat normal temperatures, because I could not handle that whatsoever.
Yeah, that's good. That's over. I have a ton of family way out on the west coast of Canada, and they'll complain when it's like -5. So I mean, I get it. It's a different cold, but it's not the same as when you get those crazy cold snaps. Matt, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Just got over. Yeah, we had one little snowfall, and I think that's the end now. Unless we get another one around the 14th. It seems like around mid-February there's still something, but I hope not. But yeah, it's and cold flu season still hitting me hard. So, but feeling a bit better today. So
good. Happy to hear that. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be doing a redraft for the 2015 NHL Draft. It's become a bit of a benchmark in recent years for every draft as you compare it to 2015 and you look at how strong that first round looks today. But yeah, we're just going to hop into it because this is there's a lot of picks. There are 30 teams in the NHL at this point. No Vegas, no Seattle in the NHL yet. So we've got 30 picks to make, and we're going to alternate taking our picks for each team. We're going to try to pick the best player, but also thinking a little bit about the needs of the team at the time, if possible. It was a good 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago, but we'll do what we can there a little bit. So yeah, with that, we're going to kick it off. Edmonton Oilers had the first overall pick, and Peter, you're picking first here. So who do you have first overall in 2015?
This is a very tough one. You know, I had to put my GM cap on for a second and think long and hard about this, but unfortunately I'm going to have to go with Connor McDavid to the Edmonton Oilers. I know, big shocker, right? You know what? He was the star player in his draft year. Then there was all this hype because of him being a generational talent. He displayed why through 7 seasons already in the NHL. Plus, I'm probably sure not good with the math, but from what he's had with his career right now, it's just absolutely phenomenal what he's able to do. The 8 years, sorry. And in those 8 years, he's hit the 100-point mark already 5 times, and definitely on pace to do it again with 92 in 50 this season. 41 goals, going to match goal total from last season. He's just on another level. It's just crazy. So there's no doubt about it that Connor McDavid is number 1 still.
Yeah, for sure. He's on pace to hit 100 like next week, probably. That's kind of a no-brainer. The easiest pick of the draft. Matt, we'll come to you next, picking second overall for the Buffalo Sabres.
Well, this is going to change from what they actually did. And Buffalo Sabres proud to select from the London Knights of the OHL, Mitch Marner. And as Maple Leafs fans know of what he did get picked, he's been a superstar in the NHL since pretty much when he started in the NHL. And he just keeps getting better over the time he's been. Has 515 points so far in the one of the higher point totals of this draft class. Buffalo Sabres, I feel they needed at the time they needed everything at that time as the Sabres. So, and they were unhappy they didn't get Jack Eichel, or they didn't get Connor McDavid. I think it'll be pretty good with Mitch Marner. They be at a different spot. So Mitch Marner going to the Buffalo Sabres. Wouldn't have all that drama with Jack Eichel. Who
Mhm.
knows where they'd be with him.
Yeah, it's tough to tell because Eichel never had a whole lot of help for most of his early years there. So who knows if maybe Marner could have turned them around sooner, or if he would have had a similar experience. All right, so I'm going to pick next, third overall for the Arizona Coyotes. I'm going to go with Mikko Rantanen. An early bit of an early riser here. Went 10th overall originally. I'm a huge fan of his. There's a few people you could take at this spot and I wouldn't be upset, but I love him. And the Coyotes getting a big, strong, incredibly skilled player in Rantanen. I think that would. Where were they even in 2015? I know they got Dylan Strome there, and this would be a bit of an upgrade. But I don't know. I like him a lot. I think the Avalanche wouldn't be Stanley Cup champions without him, personally. Though I guess we'll see who they get at 10th overall this in our redraft, and maybe they'd be fine. But yeah, I like Rantanen a lot. He's my pick for third. Peter, so we're back around to you at fourth with the Toronto Maple Leafs pick.
Yeah, I'm really excited with this one because I had a feeling that Mitch Marner probably would have gone before the Maple Leafs selected Mitch Marner. But and with Mikko Rantanen gone, I would have taken a wing, but I am going to take from Carp out of the SM Liga, Sebastian Aho. So we talked about Rantanen being an early riser. Aho was drafted in the second round, 35th overall. He's acting like a first rounder. He's acting or playing like a top 5 player right now. And he's just been so consistent ever since he came into the NHL. Consistent 60, 70, 80 point guy, a little bit more goal scoring abilities than Mitch Marner early on in his career compared to where he was then. But if the Maple Leafs got him as a centerman, things worked out, you probably would have had Austin Matthews and Sebastian Aho as your possible 1-2. Then again, you're going to come up to the conclusion, how are you going to fit both under the cap? I get it. But you know what? Sebastian Aho would have looked good in blue and white if the Maple Leafs did draft him. And in this mock draft or redraft, I am going to take Sebastian Aho.
Yeah, it's another great one. Big Aho fans on this podcast. Matt, we'll come to you next at fifth overall, Carolina Hurricanes pick.
Wow, and this is a difficult one, but I'm going to go and jump a guy that was drafted all the way down in the 5th round, and drafting him Kirill Kaprizov at 5th overall for the Carolina Hurricanes. See what he's done with the Minnesota Wild since coming there. He's, who knows? I mean, at the time, he may not have come to Carolina right away. May have taken a bit of time he was in the KHL for so long. But I really don't know what type of his point totals would be with him starting in the league as all the other guys have done. But he's been electric. He's probably going to hit 100 points again this season, pretty close to it. Kirill Kaprizov going to the Carolina Hurricanes, I think they'd be pretty happy with him in the lineup. So Kaprizov jumping from the 5th round all the way to 5th overall.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest jump we'll see. I mean, it's tough to argue, and there's a real argument to be made that he could be a couple picks higher, maybe. I think he's done the most for himself in the last 2-3 years out of anyone by far. Be interesting to see where he kind of ends up towards the end of the careers of these ages of players. See where he ranks. I don't know. Okay, so 6th overall, I'll pick for the New Jersey Devils. And I'm going to go with Jack Eichel. He's had a bit of an up and down career. That Buffalo tenure didn't quite work out. But he had seasons in there where he looked like no doubt top 5 guy. And the start of this season in Vegas, he looked like that for sure. Like he looked like an absolute star. He was killing it. He was one of the best players in the league. He had an injury and he's been a little less incredible, but he's still a really good player. I think he's worth the pick, and hopefully things maybe pan out a little differently for New Jersey. They probably would have had Eichel for the period of time there where they had Taylor Hall. Who knows? Maybe that team can do a little more damage than one fluky playoff run. But I think that could have been a fun pairing to watch in Jersey. So yeah, I'm going with Jack Eichel. Peter, you're up at 7 for the Philadelphia Flyers.
I love that, Philly Flyers. I am going to go with, from the Youngstown Phantoms, Kyle Connor. Obviously that was his team when he was drafted then. Again, because of what we don't know what they were like or capable of back then, if we had to redo the draft right now, Kyle Connor is a definite top 10 pick. And every single season that he's played in, there's only one season where he didn't crack 30 goals. He's definitely on pace to do that again this year. So that would probably put him up as 5 30-goal seasons in 6 seasons with the Winnipeg Jets currently right now. If everything panned out, he probably would have been or had that same kind of production with the Flyers. And, considering how they needed goal scoring back then, they needed goal scoring right now, I still wouldn't hesitate on taking Kyle Connor within the top 10. So he would be my pick for the Flyers.
Nice. That's a good one. I like Connor a lot. Just incredible offensive player in Winnipeg right now. Matt, you're up next at 8 for the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Well, they chose Zach Werenski at this point. He's still on the board, but I'm going to go a different direction. I'm going to go with Matthew Barzal coming out of this one. New York Islanders picked him a little later. So Matthew Barzal going to the Columbus Blue Jackets. At the time, I believe they were still looking, not sure if they had Rick Nash still, but I know like Johansson was in their system or something like that. So, they may have needed a Barzal would have really, I think, helped them out at this point in their development. So, but Werenski would have been a good pick at this point too, but I'm going forward with Barzal.
Okay, that's a good one. I wasn't sure if you're going to have them take Werenski again, and I kind of have the same problem here. I'm picking 9th for the San Jose Sharks, and Timo Meier's still on the board, who I think they'd be more than happy to still have. He's been really rising a lot lately, but I'm actually going to go with Werenski for a couple reasons. I think of the Sharks team in those years, and obviously they could use a good offensive defenseman like Werenski, but I'm kind of doing it for a weird reason. And that's that maybe if they have Werenski on the team, they don't feel the need to trade for Erik Karlsson a few years later and trade away the pick that gets used for Tim Stützle by the Ottawa Senators. They traded that first round pick that became 3rd overall. Maybe they still have that. If they have the defenseman, they don't feel the need to make that trade. It's kind of a weird reason, also because he's a really good player, but maybe they have a little extra talent if they didn't feel that need as heavily. So that's my pick there, Zach Werenski. Peter, you're up at 10 for the Colorado Avalanche.
So with Rantanen going in the top 3, it's a good thing that Timo Meier dropped, because I'm going to take Timo Meier to the Colorado Avalanche. And like you said, for all the reasons that the San Jose Sharks would have loved to have him, the consistent goal scoring, the power forward like mentality, the net front presence, he's just a very physical, tenacious battler for the puck every single time he's on the ice. Like, he's constantly involved with the play. And I think that, even if they didn't, if he probably had fell to them originally where the Colorado Avalanche were, maybe, or it was just one spot because basically Rantanen and Meier swapped. But if Timo Meier was available to them then, I'm pretty sure Colorado probably would have taken them because of the fact that he can be a little bit physical in your face and still have that goal scoring prowess to his game. So I'm going with Timo Meier to the Colorado Avalanche there.
Nice. That's a good one. I mean, that's not the worst swap in the world if you don't get Rantanen to get Meier. Matt, you're up at 11 for the Florida Panthers.
All right. Well, the Florida Panthers, they're going to go defense on this one and going with Thomas Chabot. And he's, again, another defenseman that probably was dropped quite a bit. 18th overall is where he went. But Florida's going to pick him at 11th here. And he's been amazing for the Ottawa Senators. So probably their best defenseman by far. Plays a ton of minutes, puts up a lot of offense. I think he still has a lot more to give at this point. I think Florida would be really happy with him as their future number 1 defenseman.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of teams would be. That'd be a good one because I think, was it just the year before they landed Aaron Ekblad? So Ekblad, Shabbat on that decor would be pretty solid. I'm picking next for the Dallas Stars at 12th overall, and I'm actually going to have them taking Rupe Hintz. They took him in the second round of this draft, but I think, well, for one, he's a perfect fit there, but I really like that player, and I think Hintz is worthy of 12th overall, so I'm going to take him. And now we're onto a fun run that we'll talk about a little bit after we finish it. The Boston Bruins have the next 3 selections, which is incredible. So, Peter, you're going to take the first one at 13th overall.
Yeah, I still can't believe that it's been this long that they messed up those 3 consecutive picks. But I'm going to try and right the wrong and start it off with them taking from the Ottawa 67's Travis Konecny, who basically fits that whole entire Boston Bruins mentality. You know, he's like aggressive on the forecheck, in your face, has that goal scoring ability, likes to trip the opponents a lot, as we've seen with Brad Marchand. So I'm pretty sure he could have learned quite a few new phrases or tips from him. But I think that Konecny probably would have been a really good fit for Boston then, and I would say that he's still a really good fit right now. So Travis Konecny, 13th overall.
Yeah, already looks better than their original picks. Matt, who do you have for Boston at 14th?
Well, they picked a defenseman here. I'm going to go defense again, but a different guy, Eric Cernak. He's going into the first round, and he is worthy of a first-round pick, I believe. You know, he's been such a rock for the Tampa Bay Lightning, probably one of their best defensemen. You know, plays tons of minutes. He just signed that long-term contract. Wasn't drafted by the Lightning, drafted by the Kings in the second round, but Boston Bruins, he's that type of, like we say, Bruins type defenseman, gritty, not afraid to block shots. So Cernak going to the Bruins at 14th overall.
Ooh, okay. That's a good one too. For the third Boston pick at 15th, I'm going to go with another guy that kind of feels like he's a bit of a fit for the Bruins. He's got a strong two-way game. Joel Eriksson Ek is who I'm going to go with. Minnesota Wild draft pick. I think he went 20th overall originally. So he comes up a little bit. Not the most electric offensive guy that you're going to see, but that solid two-way game that I think Boston seems to really value for people that buy into their culture. So that is our top 15. I'm just writing these down so that we don't forget them. So yeah, those Boston picks, we're going to talk about those for a second. 13, 14, 15. They've been pretty famous for missing out on a lot of talent. Originally, they got Jake DeBrusk, Jakub Zboril, and who's the third one? Senyshyn? Yeah. So Jake DeBrusk, great player. I don't think it'll be too much longer on this mock draft or this redraft before he shows up. But the other two, I'd be a little more surprised to see their names pop up. They missed out on a ton of talent. You look at the 3 players, well, even just the next 10 players in the real draft that went after them. So we have them actually picking Travis Konecny, Eric Cernak, and Joel Eriksson Ek. Where do you guys think they would be if they had this new group of those 3 players? Matt, what do you think? Where would they be with these 3 compared to the 3 they actually picked?
Well, they're the best team in the NHL right now. But, you know, with those 3, they may have a few cups, maybe. They may have, you know, had a few more times in the final. I mean, like you say, Cernak was such a key part of the Lightning. Probably be a key part of the Bruins as well. And then Konecny, he's been really good for Philly. Probably be even better in Boston, playing with guys like, you know, Pasternak and those guys. Yeah, and I mean that's just. And then who's the last? The last guy was Eriksson Ek, which, yeah, I mean he's one of those great two-way type, you know, centermen. Yeah, I think they'd be a lot further along. I think they'd be probably, like I say, have a few more cups under their belt, or at least a few more appearances in the final.
Sure. Yeah. Maybe the 2019 Stanley Cup goes the other way against St. Louis. Who knows? Yeah. Peter, what do you think? Where would Boston be at if they had our 3 picks at 13, 14, 15 compared to the players they actually grabbed?
Yeah, definitely much deeper, a lot more balance, a lot more skill, but they still play with that Boston Bruins mentality, all 3 of them. So I think that would be a little bit kind of like what Matt said, probably would have been a difference maker against the St. Louis Blues in that cup run. Probably would have, all of them would have had their name etched on the cup. Yeah, definitely 100% much better than what we saw previously before. I would take a trio of Konechny, Chernak, and Ek over. I mean, DeBrusk is starting to pick it up with the Bruins right now. There was that whole little bit of turmoil where he wasn't happy, requested a trade, given an opportunity, and now he's starting to be found his game, which if we were to redraft DeBrusk in that spot, maybe it would still be okay. But given how much upside we're seeing right now with Konechny and Eriksson Ek and at forward, I think this is probably better than what they have with DeBrusk.
Sure, yeah. I feel like there are like hundreds of combinations of players you could make at this spot that would ultimately have turned out better, but that's the draft. You never know. It's not that they picked 2-3 guys that nobody had heard of and nobody liked. Like these were highly thought of prospects, and it didn't turn out. Pretty poor luck for them. But you know, we can say all this with hindsight now, but that's what this exercise is about. Okay, so I've got a quick fire question for you guys that you have not heard, and you're gonna have to answer as soon as you hear me say it. And I'd love it if listeners out there want to participate in the comments or something, give me your answers there. I've got one here and a couple more later in the show. So I'm going to start with Peter. How much of a debate do you think there is for the second overall pick in a redraft situation? Obviously, Marner, Rantanen, Aho, maybe Kaprizov all have cases. Do you think it's close, or do you think? I mean, we all had Marner there probably at 2. Or do you think he's run away with that a little too much?
Yeah, I think the argument you can make is that Rantanen has a cup and Marner hasn't. But then again, hindsight 2020, right?
Yeah.
Really can't tell who's going to have that kind of success down the line. But I think no matter what, if you were to take Marner or Rantanen as that second overall pick, it's basically a toss up right now. You're still getting an elite level top 10 winger onto your team, and I think if teams were able to take that chance and redraft, they were pretty sure Marner and Rantanen would be the top 2 names at the top. It's very neck and neck, though.
Yeah, for sure. It's pretty tight. You'd be happy with either. That's a fair answer. Matt, what do you think? Is there much of a debate for second overall here? Marner, Rantanen, Aho, anyone else, or do you think it's pretty cut and dry with Marner at the 2 spot?
Yeah, I think Marner's really he's really pulled away from those guys. I mean, the thing is, you know, Aho he's popped into that top 3. I mean, I would say he does have a case to be a second overall. And, you know, and looking at Rantanen and what he's done too, I mean, all these guys have potential, but what Marner has done, not just in the NHL, but for the Maple Leafs in franchise history, I think he's one of the top guys for scoring now. Right. So
he's climbing quick.
He's climbing quick. And, you know, I don't know, like, again, hindsight, would he be the same player if Austin Matthews wasn't playing with him a lot? We don't know, because we'll never find out. You know, what type of talent would he have had in Buffalo? Like, you know, he was where he actually went in our draft here. Would he have had the same support? Again, we don't know. But yeah, I think at this point, looking at what he's done in the NHL, I think definitely second overall.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit tougher for me than it seems to be for you guys to have him as the clear number 2. I think he's still my number 2. I just seeing what Rantanen did for a lot of this season with a ton of the top talent on that Avalanche team out, and he's just lighting it up. He's just running the team, the entire offense for the team. That was very impressive for me, but that's just half the season, and that's not the 6-7 year track record that all those players have. I don't know. It's a fun debate there, though. There's quite a few good players in that top 5.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now I'm just gonna take a quick break for our ads, and then we'll jump back in at 16th overall. So I want to let you guys know this episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Hockeypedia. Have you ever been looking for details on a player that just competed in the World Junior Championship? Do you want to know who Aatu Ratu is and what he would look like in Vancouver, or also maybe how to pronounce his name? I'm not sure I'm good at that, but maybe I should look it up. You curious who was in the 2015 Stanley Cup playoffs? Curious what the NHL awards are and who they're named after and stuff like that. If you're interested in these or any other hockey questions, make sure you check out and bookmark the Hockey Writers Hockeypedia. It's an ever-growing collection of hockey resources that is invaluable to any fan looking for information. Check for a link in the show description and dive in today. It's Hockeypedia on thehockeywriters.com. All right, so as I said, we're going to jump back in with our 2015 redraft at the back half of the first round. This will probably go a little quicker because there's a little less excitement in our hearts about these players, maybe. But we'll jump back in at 16. Peter, that's your pick with the New York Islanders.
Yeah, this is where it gets tough too, and because a lot of the top names are gone, but at the same time, there's still a lot of quality depth. And I'm going to go with the defenseman Noah Hanifin to the New York Islanders. It took a while for him to get his feet wet or to adjust to the NHL level. There were, times where we started to doubt if he was really worth that top 5 pick. Clearly not it right now, but he's still worthy of being within that top 20, considering how he's still able to provide that good, solid two-way game, jumping into the offense every now and then. So I think he would have been a really great fit for the New York Islanders as well. Obviously, decent, consistent production as throughout his career. Everyone's going to look at his plus minus and be like, oh, but he's minus most of his career. Well, you know what? We're not talking about plus minus. I still think that under the system, he seems like kind of a systems type of player. And I think he would thrive in that defensive minded situation with the New York Islanders.
Nice. Yeah, I think Noah Hanifin's a great pick there. Matt, you're up next at 17 for the Winnipeg Jets.
All right. Well, I'm the guy of pushing guys from the bottom to the top. So this is going Anthony Cirelli going to the Winnipeg Jets. We all know what he's done with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Probably one of their best two-way centermen. Probably one of the best two-way centermen in the NHL right now. And a third-round pick, he shouldn't be. He should be a first-round pick. So I'm going Winnipeg Jets, Anthony Cirelli.
Nice. That's a good one. Another jumper, like you said, jumping up pretty high here into 17th overall. At 18th for the Ottawa Senators. Ooh, who am I going to go with? I'm going to go with someone who's been rising a bit more lately, but I truly believe it's not a fluke and it's a breakout. I'm going to go with Rasmus Andersson for the Ottawa Senators here. The Flames defenseman who has looked incredible this season. And it really does feel like he's coming out of his shell and he's showing what he can do. I also believe he's the one who scored that goal against Mike Smith in the playoffs last year from like his own blue line or whatever. So do with that what you will. Peter, you're up next at 19 for the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, I am going to go with Troy Terry. Kind of like you, player starting to rise up ever since he came into the NHL. I mean, he had 15 points in 2019-20, 20 and 48, and then he had that breakout season with 67. He has 42 right now, and considering the Ducks really aren't that competitive and they're down in the lottery again, he seems to still be consistent with his production. So I'm thinking that he would be a really great winger on the right-hand side for the Detroit Red Wings because he would still provide that offensive flair.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's a no-doubter. I mean, Troy Terry's looked great. Bad team. They looked good for part of last year, not at all this year, but feels like he'll be a real part of that team going forward as they hopefully eventually get out of their rebuild. They thought they were out of it last year, and then 2022 hit, and they had a horrible calendar year. Next up is Matt here at 20th. You're picking for the Minnesota Wild.
All right. Well, Minnesota Wild are going to go for a hometown boy since Joel Eriksson is not on the board anymore. He's going for Brock Besser. And this is a guy who's been rumored to go to the Wild in a trade. So they're going to get him in the draft. So Brock Besser to the Minnesota Wild, I think he would really, of course, help their offense at the time. I don't know if he'd have the same problems with his injuries and stuff in Minnesota or if he would score more. But he's still a really solid player in the NHL, and I think they'd be really happy to get him at 20.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of feels like he's running into a little bit of a plateau in Vancouver. So who knows? Maybe being at home would be kind of the change, or at least the different landing spot for him in the NHL that might work out a little better. Next up at 21 is the Ottawa Senators. And I'm going to pick Jake DeBrusk. I'm going to take him here. He's had a up and down career, as was mentioned before. He had a rough go for a while there in Boston and requested a trade. Got a bit of an opportunity because there were no takers, and they wanted to kind of show him off and maybe boost his stats. But then he kept playing well, and he kept playing better and better. And they're like, maybe we want you here. And he's like, yeah, I think I want to stay. And so he rescinded that trade request. And yeah, it's looked pretty good there this year. I like him a lot. I think maybe the pressure of being the only NHL player out of that 3 early top 16 picks for that team, maybe that was a part of it, or just coming to a team that was so good for so long. But I think he's really coming into his own now, and I think he's a good pick at 21 for the Senators. Peter, you're next, 22 for the Washington Capitals.
Yeah, and I'm going to take from the Erie Otters, Dylan Strome. Kind of fitting how he just signed that contract with the Washington Capitals, right? So love how things come full circle. Based on like seasonal performance, if we were to do the redraft, Dylan Strome would have dropped in that sense because of the fact that, you know, he didn't quite get that opportunity with the Arizona Coyotes. He didn't quite mesh in well with the Chicago Blackhawks, but then he got that opportunity to play in a top 6 role with the Washington Capitals and appears to be playing really well on the top line right now. So the fact that he's having a much better performance career-wise, well, I shouldn't say that, you know, he had his up and down moments with Chicago. He had 51 points and then he had solid 48 last season, but now he's on pace, or he has 36 right now, on pace to sort of match that season. But the fact that he found his consistency, found his footing, I think that's a really good sign for him. And, you know, given how the Washington Capitals have been looking for some help up the middle because they've had dealt some injuries, I think Strome right now would be really helpful if we were to redraft him. But it's just kind of perfect how I pick him for the Capitals, and he's on the Capitals right now.
Yeah, sometimes it just lines up like that. Hey,
exactly.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a big new contract for him, for a team that just doesn't seem to go away when it comes to making the playoffs every year. But who knows how much longer that'll last. This one also lined up pretty well, kind of a different reason. But Matt, I've got you picking here at 23 for the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. You know, at the time they needed everything, I believe at the time. Well, at the time they were still a pretty competitive team. But I'm looking towards the future for defense and going to go with Brandon Carlo, a guy that the Canucks have actually been rumored in being interested in with the Boston Bruins. So maybe he wouldn't have as many concussion issues with Vancouver. But so going with Brandon Carlo here for the Canucks.
That's a good one. That feels a major need they've had feels like forever. Not gonna lie. Okay, Brandon Carlo. Ooh, this is tough. So I'm picking here at 24 for the Philadelphia Flyers, the Philly Flyers again. I'm going to take Vince Dunn, another player that has really broken out this year, a defenseman. He was drafted by the Kraken in their expansion draft, the Seattle Kraken, recently, and kind of a meh first year in Seattle last year, but has really broken out in a big way. Giordano is gone, and he has been top dog on defense, at least offensively this year. Really impressive. Really like what he's shown, and I think he'd go around this range for sure, mid-late 20s in a redraft. So, Peter, you're up next at 25 with the Winnipeg Jets.
I'm surprised you didn't take Connor Garland with your pick, Matt, but I'm going to take Connor Garland here right now for the Winnipeg Jets. And, you know, there's obviously with Kyle Connor, the Jets, they got a really great pick with him there. But if they were to repick right now, with their second pick, I think Connor Garland would be a great complementary piece later in the draft because he still has good offensive upside, great energy, great work ethic. a consistent 50-point kind of player that can be a great secondary player on any team. And I think with the Winnipeg Jets, he probably would have been another reliable depth piece on there. So still providing top 6 upside. So I would have gone with I would have gone with Connor Garland to the Jets. There we go.
You got it. You nailed it. It's all good. I like Garland a lot. I like watching him just like do constant spins when he's in the offensive zone. He's just always bouncing and spinning around, and it's a lot of fun to watch. Even if it feels a little over the top sometimes, it's still fun. Matt, you're up here at 26 for the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, if Garland was still on the board, that's where Montreal would have picked him. They love their quick, small guys. But since Garland went just ahead, Montreal Canadiens are going to go with Andrew Mangiapane, who went all the way in the 6th round in this draft, but he's jumping up to 26th overall. What he's done in the NHL stuff lately, he's been really good. And I think Mangiapane would probably be at least a 2nd rounder in a redraft, but he's going to the Montreal Canadiens at 26.
Yeah, that's a great one. He was going to be my next pick, so I'm scrambling. Now I'm at 27 for the Anaheim Ducks, and there's a couple goalies I'd actually look at here, but especially at the time, John Gibson was really establishing himself, so I don't think that would make a lot of sense for them. I'm going to go with another defenseman. I think this is a trend for me. Another defenseman who has kind of been up and down, but more up lately, and that's John Marino. He looked incredible to start the year in New Jersey with the New Jersey Devils, just insane resurgence this year. He's been dealing with injuries for quite a while since, but he's shown some good stuff in Pittsburgh and then had some tough times. And now he's looked really good on that really solid defense core in New Jersey. So I would take him here at 27. Peter, you're picking for the New York Islanders at 28.
Yeah, and talk about players that are starting to come around with the resurgence, and I'm picking Lawson Krause. Originally taken 11th overall to the Florida Panthers, didn't quite have that, it factor. Automatically started his career with the Arizona Coyotes. Been playing with them ever since, but right now, the last 2 seasons, he's been finding his power forward game with his goal scoring abilities and crashing hard to the net and shots. So I think given that intensity, I think he just seemed like a perfect fit for the New York Islanders.
Nice. That's a good one there. And we've just got 2 more picks here. Matt, you're at 29 for the Columbus Blue Jackets.
This is interesting how this falls. Columbus Blue Jackets are going to pick Jack Roslovic, who is on the team right now. Was drafted by the Jets a little late, I believe. He was drafted 25th overall, so a little bit before here. But the Blue Jackets are going to pick Roslovic. He's had a pretty good career. He's had a bit of a turnaround lately. I think he's still really solid NHL player, so I think he would still go in the 1st round. But the Blue Jackets will get him a lot earlier than they have right now.
Nice. That's a fun one. I've got actually a similar one here at 30th overall for the Arizona Coyotes. Didn't do this on purpose, but I'm going to have them selecting Karel Vejmelka. Really not sure how to say it. I've heard that he has nicknames both of Veggie and Milk, which is just, that doesn't work as well. I like Veggie, but I think he's been pretty underrated in the NHL the last 2 years. A solid starter for a horrible team. He's like, I can't imagine a ton of like 2nd-year NHL starting goalies who could have an above 900 save percentage on this year's Arizona Coyotes team. But that's exactly what he's doing. 3 shutouts with that defense in front of him. Are you kidding me? I think he's worth a 1st round pick here right at the end. There's a couple other goaltenders, Dan Vladar, Ilya Samsonov, who I think could easily have been the first goalie off the board in a redraft as well. But I'm just excited by him, and hopefully the Coyotes can get good in a couple years before his contract runs out, and we can see what he looks like with some better players around him.
Maple Leafs know too well of Vejmelka.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Didn't need to bring that up, Matt, but thanks.
Yeah, come on. Peter, I think it's because we've made fun of the Canucks so much this year. I think he's just trying to get back.
That's okay. Fair enough. Yeah,
we'll allow it. Okay, so I've just got a couple questions. That's the end of our first round mock draft for this year, for the 2015 draft, not for the current year. So I'm curious what you guys think. Which teams, might be a little hard to remember certain things, but maybe just one of your own picks remember or something. Which teams do you think are better off after this redraft? I think an easy one to say is the Coyotes, who had Dylan Strome at third overall. And who did they take 30th again? Can never remember that.
Just took.
They have a 30th. Oh, Nick Merkley. They had Nick Merkley in the original draft.
Yeah.
But here we've got them taking Mikko Rantanen and Vejmelka, which might be a slightly better combo there. So that's one team for sure that looks like they're looking a lot better now. Matt, what do you think? Which teams do you think come out better for it with this redraft?
Next, obviously, would be the Boston Bruins. I mean, those three first rounders should have been game changers for this team, but weren't. Getting the three that we would have said, and we said in this draft, I think they'd be way better off at this point. But again, it's hard to say because they're really good anyway. But, having those three, I think it'd be a bit better. The last bunch of years, I think they would have been a higher end team, even though they've been pretty good. But I'd say looking after this draft, looking at those three players, I think they're a better team for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Peter, what do you think? Is there any team that stands out that looks better in this redraft than the real life draft?
Yeah, I still think that, the Philadelphia Flyers pick with Kyle Connor that I made, I still think that comes out a little bit better given the upside and how well he's progressed or been consistent throughout his career. I know they took, I believe it was Ivan Provorov originally in that draft. I'm not going to get into anything, but I will say that the whole Kyle Connor pick would give them a lot more upside, a lot more depth up front, and a lot more possible points for him, a lot more points for them in the standings because he has been a game-changing offensive-minded player. So that's my pick right there.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple other teams. I mean, it feels like if you didn't hit in the top 10 and then you get a great player in our redraft, like you're coming out positive. So like the New Jersey Devils had Pavel Zacha, 6th overall. Now they have Jack Eichel. That's a win. The Florida Panthers, they went from Lawson Krause to Thomas Chabot. That's another big win there. Those are a couple there. And then we've got the opposite end too. Which teams do you think are worse off after this redraft? Peter, what do you think? Is there a team that is happy that it ended up the way it did instead of this way?
That's kind of tough to say. Because we know how deep that first round is. I don't think, you would like to have one of the star players, but given how every star player played progressively better throughout their career, it's hard to say which team is worse off because they still got a decent player. And again, not just to make my pick, but like Dylan Strome, I think that not necessarily that the Capitals got worse because I believe they took Ilya Samsonov originally. Having Dylan Strome, he's more of like a reclamation project, but the fact that he's having success right now is a great step forward. But I think that maybe he's still not what he was during his draft year compared to now, but I think it's still a win for them considering that they still got a good talent later on in the draft.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good one. Matt, what do you think? Is there any teams that are a little worse off after our redraft?
Well, I'm going to say the Minnesota Wild. Nothing against Brock Besser, but looking down, Kaprizov went in the first. What did I draft him? The third or whatever. It's in the top 5, right?
Yeah.
5th overall. He wouldn't have been available to the Wild later on then. And
for sure.
And Joel Eriksson Ek has been one of their best players since he's been in their organization. So without him and the guy Besser, who knows how he would have fit into the system, I think they're worse off just because they wouldn't have Kaprizov is my biggest one.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, don't have swap Kaprizov for Besser. Like it's a bit of a gap. One other team I'll point out is the New York Islanders, who instead of landing Matthew Barzal at 16th, they would have had Noah Hannafin in our redraft, which isn't the biggest gap in the world here, but he's their, well, who knows with Bo Horvat there now, but he's their top center. He's their best forward, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so to miss out on him that's pretty tough. Okay, I've got a couple more quick fire questions here. I'm going to surprise you guys with. So, Matt, I'm coming to you first. Aside from Kirill Kaprizov, because that is the easy answer here, and I'm not going to let you answer with that. Aside from Kirill Kaprizov, who do you think is the steal of the 2015 draft?
That's a tough one. I want to say it's Sebastian Aho because he was drafted he wasn't drafted really low, but he should have been a first round pick, like where we got him. I mean, we talked about him a lot. I think he's a big steal. And then honorable mention to Mangiapane because, I mean, a 6th round pick, and he's been a 30-goal scorer now in the NHL and seems like a perennial 20 guy now. So I'm going to say those two for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Aho is a great one. He was originally picked 35th overall at the start of the 2nd round, but we had him at 4th overall. Yeah. So that's a solid one there. So, Peter, what do you think? Aside from Kaprizov, who was the steal of the draft in 2015?
I'm gonna say Anthony Cirelli because of the fact that he has two cups to his name. So kind of like a really easy answer. But given how he's developed into like a two-way energetic top 6 forward, that to me is like no one expected that kind of upside from him, given how he's a 3rd round pick. But given what we've seen so far, yeah, he's definitely looking like he already is a steal for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, absolutely. The other one that comes to mind for me is Connor Garland. Just because he was a 5th round pick, and a lot of people didn't expect him to have any shot at the NHL. He's 5'10", but he slowly got better and better in the QMJHL, ECHL, AHL, and now the NHL. And I admire that a lot, but also he seems like a pretty solid 40, 50 point guy. Some good depth offense in the middle 6 for a decent team. Maybe not the steal, but definitely one of them for sure in the 5th round. Where did we have him go here? Actually, I got to check that. We had him 25th. So to go from 123rd to 25th is pretty solid too. Okay, my next question here. So this one, I'm thinking just within a couple picks range. Peter, which team do you think is kicking themselves the most for narrowly missing out on a star?
Could I say the Boston Bruins?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
They missed out on like 3 potential stars. I mean, given from what the redraft was, they could have had Kyle Connor, Barzal, and Thomas Chabot. Those 3 went right after them. I'm also going to say the Dallas Stars too, because they took Dennis Gurianov 12th overall. That really hasn't quite panned out. If they would have taken any of those said 3 players that I mentioned, or even Eriksson, Ek, Besser, Konechny a little bit higher up, that probably would have paid off a little bit more than what they got from Gurianov.
Yeah, for sure. It feels like they I don't know. They could have got a lot more out of that kind of era of the team if they had maybe landed someone a little more exciting there. Maybe be a little less reliant on one good line in the NHL.
Yeah.
Matt, what do you think? Which team do you think is kicking themselves the most for just narrowly missing out on a star player?
Yeah, well, that's the easy one, is the Boston Bruins, because they had the pick of the litter there. I mean, they could have picked. I mean, really, at the minus our redraft, they could have had guys like, they could have picked Connor, Barzal, and Chabot.
Yep.
Like,
they could have landed those 3 guys.
Like what?
Those guys we picked them 7th, 8th, and 11th in our redraft, and they could have had all 3 of them.
Yeah. That's
insane. A tough one. That is the greatest example of hindsight. In NHL draft history, maybe.
Yeah.
Because that'd be an insane trio of forwards. You got a center, a winger, and a defense, and they're all key parts of their teams right now. So
totally. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so my pick is the Toronto Maple Leafs. At 34th overall, they took Travis Dermott. Not a horrible player by any means. I believe they traded him to Vancouver for, was it a 3rd round pick? Not a huge return for a guy who you picked 1 pick before Sebastian Aho. We've talked about, what if they had Aho instead of Marner? Well, Well, what if they had both? That was a very real possibility.
Yes.
They were one pick off from adding an elite centerman, goal scoring centerman. Imagine those two playing together. That's an incredible, just high skill line. Though I'm sure a lot of Leafs fans would complain about them all the time, probably being too soft or something. But
never a dull moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's a tough one to look back on. But basically every team passed on Aho, so it's not just their fault.
The Canucks could have had him instead of Besser. But
absolutely.
There you go.
Every team in the late first feels bad about that. Winnipeg, Montreal, Anaheim, the Islanders even. They had 2 first-rounders, and Anthony Beauvillier or Sebastian Aho. Who would you like? Tough call. All right, so that's it for our redraft of the 2015 draft. We're going to quickly go over our prospects of the week. This is the way we love to wrap up our show every week. And Matt, we'll start with you first. Who's your prospect of the week this week?
Well, I'm going to go with the draft eligible, and this guy's been amazing since he started in the NCAA with the University of Michigan. And it's Adam Fantilli. My gosh, 45 points in 24 games so far in the NCAA. After ripping up the Chicago Steel last season with 74 points in 54 games. And he's going to be the second overall pick. I mean, he could be a first overall pick. If Connor Bedard wasn't in this draft, he'd probably be in the conversation of first overall. But he's just been amazing for the NCAA. Michigan's an amazing team, but he's been leading the way as an 18-year-old. So, on a team that has guys that are 19, 20 and up, and he's been dominating. So, his points, let's just take a look at his points in the last bunch of games. He's got multi-point games in all but 2 games in those last 10. He's got 2 4-point games, a bunch of other multi-point games, bunch of multi-goal games. So, he's just been amazing, and going to go second overall to whoever doesn't get Connor Bedard. This is a great consolation prize, getting Adam Fantilli second overall. And, he didn't do a lot in the World Juniors, but I expect him doing a lot for Team Canada in this upcoming one. Because Connor Bedard's probably not going to be there because he'll probably be playing for the NHL team and they won't want to let him go. So Fantilli is going to be the leader, I think, on that team. So Fantilli, my prospect of the week, and probably not the first time we're going to be talking about him as the draft gets going here.
Definitely not the last time. He's such a solid, safe pro prospect, but he's also got tons of offensive upside, and you can be confident he's going to be a center in the NHL, and that's worth a lot in the draft. Adam Fantilli's been great all year, but especially since coming back from the World Juniors, he's just been lighting the NCAA on fire. It's nuts. So Peter, who is your prospect of the week this week?
Yeah, my prospect of the week is Columbus Blue Jackets second rounder in 2022, Luca Del Bel Belluz. Probably one of the best names from the NHL draft, but no doubt. I've always liked his overall play and upside because I was very fascinated with him during his draft year last year because of the fact that he was one of those players in the OHL that missed quite some time as a result of the pandemic. Obviously, him along with every other OHLer was a step behind, but he still managed to put up 70 points in his draft year. And right now, still off to a great start, 41 points in 34 games with the Steelheads. But then since being traded to the Sarnia Sting, who appear to be on a massive run right now to try and win the championship, 13 points in 10 games. And in his most recent game with the thrashing against the Sioux Greyhounds, he had 4 points, including a hat trick. And he's been on a very hot tear as of late, production wise, as he has 9 points in 5 games. And as mentioned, 13 in his last 10 with the team. But just his overall skill set, he's smart, he's creative, he has soft hands. Skating and speed was a little bit of a question mark, but he had the skill set to make up for that. And he also possesses a very strong two-way game as well, very responsible within his own end. And the fact that he's still finding that consistency right now, he's my prospect of the week.
That's a good pick as well. It's undeniable at this point how good the Blue Jackets have been drafting for the last few years. That feels like another win there. My prospect of the week, I think I mentioned him maybe my first episode when I was a guest a few months ago here, was Macklin Celebrini, playing for the Chicago Steel in the USHL. He is probably the favorite right now to be first overall in the 2024 NHL draft, although there's a few competitors we'll surely talk about a little later this year, like in the summer probably.
Yeah.
But just the Cole's notes on Celebrini. He's a centerman, 5'11", grew up idolizing Ryan Kessler. So imagine what that kind of does to a young kid. A little bit of a mean streak, but tons of offense. And in the USHL, he actually has a higher points per game right now than Adam Fantilli did on the same team last year. Fantilli finished the season with a 1.37 points per game rate, which is ridiculous for a draft -1 player. Celebrini is currently at a 1.47, not 37 points per game rate, second in scoring in the entire USHL. There's going to be a lot of people very excited for him. He's also a really late birthday player in that draft class, a June birthday. I believe the year happens in like the year switch over for when you're eligible for the draft classes in September. And so he's in the final quarter of the year, if you want to put it that way. So he's got plenty of time to grow physically and mature in his game. And he's been just ridiculous all year. And I'm really excited to see what he can do the next year and a half here before heading to college and then the NHL. All right. Well, that does it for us this week. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Prospect Corner. Make sure you subscribe to the Hockey Writers YouTube channel to make sure you don't miss out on the rest of our episodes. And make sure you check out our site, thehockeywriters.com, for tons of 2023 NHL draft coverage coming over the next few months. Make sure you check out Hockeypedia as well on thehockeywriters.com. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Matt. And thank you all for watching this week's episode of Prospect Corner. We'll see you next time.